Today we're gonna attempt to paint a Nocturne scene on a larger 18 by 24 canvas that I've already toned. Kind of have a mix of burnt umber, yellow ochre, and a little bit of Payne's gray mixed in. And it's gonna take me a minute or two to set up, only because I don't have my palette really mixed or laid down. So I'm actually gonna try and set that up right now. We'll see how that works out. What we're gonna do is we're gonna paint a scene. My wife took a couple photos, but I've been looking at them for more than a year, where we were driving home, and it was a waxing moon scenario where it was almost full. And I think it was December of 2020, might have been 2019 at this point, I can't remember. But it was one of those times where the moon and the sun were at almost exact opposite sides of Earth. And when that happens, sometimes you get these weird light effects. So it was just after the sun had set, the moon was already up in the sky, and there was a thin veil of cloud cover which created this eerie kind of bluish green and lit up the trees and the lake in the midground and the background, and yeah, just created for kind of an interesting eerie kind of feel. So let me get started. I already have like a handmade gray, Payne's gray, burnt umber, yellow ochre. Try and keep my earth tones together, so I'll get my sap green over there. Now, having a little debate going on in my head on what blue to use. I'm going to stick with ultramarine blue. I like to keep things simple whenever possible, and I'm much more comfortable with mixing ultramarine blue, but I might need a little phthalo blue to get the desired tint to the sky. A little dioxazine purple. And one of the eerie elements in this painting is actually going to be the reflection of the moon in the water. You know, one of the interesting things that happened was, I mean, it was a little bit of a rainbow of color in the reflection, but the dominant color in the water was actually yellow. So we're going to need some cad yellow. Fair amount of that, more than normal for a landscape painting that I do anyway. I normally don't use, at least lately, I don't use black, but I'm going to incorporate a little black, mainly just for use in darkening some of the grays in the trees. Excuse me, in the foreground. And let me see real quick if I can easily locate last time I used phthalo blue. Look at one more spot here. Here we go. And it's actually not phthalo, it's cerulean blue. I'm going to put a little bit of that on my canvas. So I might use that to tint my blue here. That might even be the dominant blue, at least for the sky. And then a big glob of white in the middle here. There we go. All right. So I'm ready to get started. And I'm realizing that you can't see my entire palette, so I'm going to make an adjustment here and move it off to the side. There we go. That should work okay. I should mention, again, I did tone the canvas. I'm going to wipe away some of the paint on the canvas with a paper towel, just to give some indication of some of the major shapes. Take away a bunch of this grayish green here. Okay. And I want the tree line in the background here. To be saturated at all, so I'm trying to indicate that in my little drawing here. The lake itself, the bank kind of runs off on a diagonal. And a strange line here, but that's okay. Some indications of some grass and other things here. And then I'm going to have some interesting trees in the foreground. And some interesting things going on here amongst this tree line as well. All right, there we go. Now, I do want to make a decision at this point about the positioning of the moon, because it is gonna impact the composition and how I lay in the paint. And I think in a lot, if I remember correctly, a lot of the photos that my wife took, the moon was right in the middle. And I don't necessarily want that to be the case. I'll probably put it here. It won't be quite that big. And then the reflection in the water. Something like that. Okay. There we go. All right, so you can get a sense of major elements of the composition, and then we have some interesting, like I mentioned, some interesting trees, which hopefully, when I put them in, will help kind of accentuate some of the eerie light effects that we're going to hope to get. Alright, so I'm going to mix up a fair amount of the dominant colors are going to be gray, blue, and green. So the big one though, I think, because I think it's really intertwined with what this painting is all about, is going to be this blue. So I'm going to mix up a fair amount of this kind of, oops, I don't want that to happen. I might have to put this back toward the center here. Yeah, it's just going to have to be how it works. So if you can't see that too well, I'm sorry. I might adjust up a little bit. Yeah, you know what, I think you should be able to see it. Okay. I'm gonna get a little of that ultramarine blue mixed in there. So I have cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, and a lot of white. And we're going to lay it in over that greenish gray hazy tone that we've laid down on the canvas, initially with pretty thin paint. And I'm going to dull this down a little bit with some of my gray. More. I think we're close here. A little bit more white I'll pull in. All right, let's see. I think that'll work. I may have to put a little glaze over it in order to get closer to what I'm gonna attempt to do. We'll create another little pool of this color for the lake over here. It's a little different. It's going to be a little cooler. Okay. All right. And the rest I think we can mix on the fly. It's just we're going to need a lot of those colors. So I wanted to have them ready to go. Okay. Let's get some of that on the canvas. I don't want to waste any of it. And maybe one of these days I'll do a whole painting just with a palette knife. I haven't done that in a while. I don't think I've ever created a video for that, but that might be something I'll do. All right. So I'm actually gonna start with that sky, and I don't want to distort the color at all, so I'm gonna start with a nice clean brush. I'm gonna get a little bit of linseed oil into the brush, And I know there's going to be a little color distortion because of the underpainting. That's still wet. I did that, maybe about 30 minutes ago, 40 minutes ago at this point. So it's dried a little bit, but it's still wet, so that'll mix in a little bit, and that's okay. You never really know how a color is gonna work, especially within but especially when there's your alla prima, which means one sitting, wet on wet. I'll wipe some of that away. I'll work it into the tree line. Just a really rough first coat. I'm going to go in directly into blue we want to use in the lake. Get a little bit of linseed oil on there, and get some of that blue going. And I don't want this necessarily to be a perfectly flat coat. If there's some texture, that's fine. If there's some drips, that's fine too. All right. And if you're not seeing it, or if you're not aware of it, I'm just using a very inexpensive hardware store type brush. All right. Now I'm going to wipe this brush. Actually, I'm going to lay this brush to the side, and I'm going to go and get a brush that I have kind of sitting in a solution here that is another one of those hardware store brushes. And it's rough. It's well worn, a lot of mileage. You can see it right there. And it's sitting in a solution of dish soap. That recommendation is a lifesaver. That was a bit of information, or a suggestion was offered by Stuart Davies. You just got to make sure you wring out the brush before you use it. It's a way to have some brushes on the ready to go for the most part when you need them, without having to go through a complicated scrubbing and cleaning process involving harsh chemicals like kerosene and other things. So I'm going to get some of the greens and the grays. So I want these trees in the background. They're basically going to be a mixture of a couple different grays and a little bit of yellow ochre. So you want them to get pushed back in the distance. We don't want them to advance forward. We want them to recede back in the painting. And we'll do some things to create the illusion of detail, the illusion of there being a three-dimensional bank on the shore and depth amongst the trees. We will get a little bit of more green into that. nice thin coat. Really just want to create some variance of brush strokes and texture. Don't want too many unnatural looking patterns. And then we'll go through with a little bit of a warmer gray. We'll take some of that yellow ochre. I'm going to pull it over here, down into this pile. And I'm going to work that in. You know, maybe to create just a little bit of a rough indication that those treetops are reflecting some of that eerie light off of the moon, or from the moon, which is a reflection of reflected light. Right? Because the moon doesn't generate its own light. It's reflecting the sun's light. Okay. And we'll get some indication of that same color down here. I think we'll I'm going to pull that tree line up a little bit on this side of the painting. Use the same brush, and I'm going to use a mixture of sap green and burnt umber. I'm going to start building up the foreground a little bit. This will really be the darkest area for the most part, the darkest mass of color. And we're going to work in, these are mostly warm colors, sap green and burnt umber are warm colors, devoid of any, or much blue, which is a cool color. So we'll work in a mixture of cooler and warmer shadows and cooler and warmer highlights, but for now we're just trying to cover the whole canvas. You know, this is a early morning pre-work painting session, which is pretty much all I do with, you know, the activities we have with two teenagers involved in sports and school activities and that sort of thing. So get the whole canvas covered at this point as quickly as possible, and just looking to create textures within the shapes that could be indicative of, you know, some natural things going on, like grass growing, and you'll see I'll make messes and stuff, but we can, at this point, we can clean it up. At this point, early on like this, you want to work as fast as possible. Later on, the painting, take a little bit more of a deliberate approach. I'm going to use that same color that's on the brush, and I'm going to come up near the shoreline and just Try to create some indication of some darker shadows. Some of the brush and maybe even some indication of some of those tree trunks. Okay. All right, I am going to stick with this brush, but before I do anything, I want to take a clean sheet of paper towel. I want to get some of this little splatter out of there if I can. And that's okay, it created a little light spot, that's fine. Same here. And then, you know, I'm going to create a little bit of a light spot here. Through. Okay. What I'll do is I'm just gonna come through this water and just smooth it out a little bit. Bring some of the water in, some of the blue hue into where that reflection is going to go. I could always wipe that out again. I just want to get some of that blue in there. I don't want it to be too... I'm going to take my paper towel and gonna just gently kind of wipe out this edge. I don't want there to be any kind of potential for a clean edge here. I don't want that to be. And then I'm just going to use a paper towel to create more texture. And I'll do the same thing. Actually, while I have some of that darker paint, I'll just go right in here and do the same thing. You can kind of see where we're going with this. Alright, so I'm going to do a little experiment here. Didn't plan on this. I'm actually going to dip into this darker color. And I'm going to use my paper towel to create some patterns here in and amongst the tree canopy. Just to darken that a little bit. What's the worst thing that can happen? If I don't like it, wipe it away and do it again. you know what, I'm going to build on that a little bit. Pull in some of the Payne's gray. And green. There we go. And you know what, this is gonna, that's probably good because this is gonna get darker as a result of me kind of putting some of the trees in the foreground. Doing a little thinking here. We're 22 minutes in. Yeah, we have a nice little picture already, which is kind of cool. Far from finished. Let's toss away some of this used paper towel. Okay. Alrighty. I'm gonna take my ugly brush here, and I'm going to use a mixture of yellow ochre and sap green, and I'm going to get just some indication more of this being a grassy area. And I think generally as I get out more into, you know, closer to the edge of the banks of the little lake here, it'll get gradually a little lighter. It almost be time for me to retire this brush, or at least do some surgery and snip away some of those rough edges. But you know, I like that because it, you know, as long as I control it and harness it, it helps me create textures which, you know, make it look like I might have painstakingly worked on a painting for a long time in the effort to add details that as you can see, I've laid in relatively quickly. Anything you can do to make the painting process more efficient and save yourself time and create the illusion of a lot of detail and a lot of work, the better, the fresher a painting will tend to look. You know, if you do put in a ton of time trying to add in detail, tend to look stiff, lack energy. That's something I've personally been accused of before, but you don't want your paintings to be that way. Okay. A little more green here and there. Maybe try and subtly create some cues, trying to draw the viewer's eye, you know, without making it obvious. And notice I'm twisting this brush because I don't want the same patterns to repeat too often. And I don't want too much symmetry. All right. I'm going to probably the most intense colors, the yellows and other things, you know, for the end. I'm gonna get some of this in here. All right, I'm gonna put away this big old ugly brush. Just put that away. And I'm probably gonna look for a flat brush, long haired flat brush, and start laying in some of these tree trunks in the foreground. I could always rebuild any of this if I ruin it as I go, so let's see, what can I find here? Here we go. That's what I'm talking about. Long hair flat brush. It's gonna be, whoops, I'm losing my palette here. All right. Take a little bit of this black and get some of this gray. Before I go further, let me fix what I have going on here. I don't know how I'm messing it up, but maybe there we go. There we go. That should be pretty snug. All right. So I have a homemade gray that I'm darkening with some ivory black, which I tend not to use. I'm going to bring in quite a bit of dioxazine purple because these are trees in the foreground. I want to warm that up a little bit, and this is kind of going to be the darkest parts of these trees in the foreground right now. So I want a nice warm purpley rich dark gray, which will serve as the darkest portion of these trees. I'll wet this a little bit and bring in some oil, and just trying to envision, things in groups of 3 are pretty good. Odd numbers in general, 7, 5, 3. I want to keep this simple. There's going to be almost like a lacy feel to these trees if I do it right. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do offset. I'm going to do 2 here. These are younger trees that have multiple trunks kind of grown together. And I'm going to do 1 here. And they're different trees. One I think is going to be a birch, and the other 2 are, I believe, to be rock oak trees, but I'm not sure. So it kind of grows up like this, and then there's a separate trunk alongside of it that grows up like this. Okay. And don't worry, we'll honor, the normal taper. Just kind of roughing it in right now. The main stem or the main trunk. We'll do the other one here. And this is eventually going to be lighter in color. This is going to be a birch tree, not a white birch, but a birch tree. It has multiple stems in this case, and it's actually going to cut behind. Okay. And then we have this weird network of trees which is going to be over here. This is going to be the third. Not quite lined up with the moon, but it is going to cross in front of that and hide it a little bit. Plug in all kinds of lacy tree limbs. I try not to, I always have a hard time finding my liner brushes and my rigger brush, but for the purposes of this painting, I think it's going to be important for me to bite the bullet and and actually use those brushes. I don't know why I have a mental block on it. No. There we go. All right. Yeah. Now, in real life, there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on, but I want to simplify. A whole bunch of stuff. There's more brush and smaller trees kind of shooting up, and I might give some indication of that, but you know, for the most part, this is how it's going to go. Now, there's all kinds of branches. Before I get to that, I'm going to start building some of the texture and color variants in these trunks. And we're going to do that by incorporating more of this gray. And as we go, we'll work on, you know, optimizing the shape of the tree. You know, making sure that there's a realistic or semi-realistic taper as the tree grows up to the sky. And this is going to be our birch tree, so that's going to have the biggest contrast. Right now. All right. Work some of this color in through here. What to do now? I think what I need to do is work on the texture of those trees, and then gradually move to thinner and thinner brushes and work in the thinner tree limbs. I think that's where I have to go with this right now. And so what I'm going to do is get some of this lighter green or gray. haphazardly start working it in. Yeah, so this gray is a combination of all the paint colors, no black, very little white, from my last painting. And unintentionally, but semi-intentionally, there's kind of a stronger sap green tint to it than normally would happen, and I think that's going to work nicely here as I try to build out these trees. And then this tree, these trees on either end, these groupings of trees are the same. This tree here is a birch, so it's going to get a little bit of a different treatment. The bark is a little different, a little less uniform. I could always work in some darker colors to accentuate kind of the roughness of the bark here. So I'm not too worried about overdoing it. And there we go. There we go. So I'll probably incorporate a little bit of white and a little more purple as I try to create the illusion of detail around the birch tree. And I'm just gonna kind of wipe off this brush a little bit. So I'll start with the purple, and there's already purple in there, but I'm just going to work that in because this tree needs to look different than the other ones, especially here. And then I'll get some significant amount of that white with purple mixed into this gray, even a little blue. Yeah, and a little more of this green, greenish gray, and a little more white, a little more. Okay. There we go. And then we'll, birch trees have that bark that, kind of peels off in sheets. Again, I don't want this to be too uniform. I'll have to play around with that a little bit. There's going to be, there we go. This is a weird time of day. You know, we're kind of in between night and day. The sun just went over the horizon behind us, so the sky is still lit by the sun, and meanwhile the moon is up. Which is, you know, why we're even painting this, because it created a, you know, weird, eerie feeling. Okay. Which may or may not resonate in the end, and that's okay. I could always paint over it. So now what I want to do in these next couple of minutes, I don't have a lot of time. Hoping I get this done in one setting. Is I want to create a haphazard kind of tapestry and lacy feeling in and amongst the tree branches. I want to get that piece started. So I'm gonna let's start with this brush. No, you know what? Let me see if I can find. You know, it'd be good for this, a dagger brush, but I don't think I have one. I think I lost mine. I think I ruined it. Yeah, I definitely could. I could benefit from, you know, a class maybe in. If I were to take a class in brush care. There's probably a workshop out there for that. All right, so I'm going to take this little bristle brush. It's kind of a beat up, I would say almost a filbert shape, and I'm going to use that to create some of the medium size lacy tree branches, and I'm going to keep dipping into this darker color here. I'm going to bring in some of the pure ultramarine blue just to darken that some more, some of the green. And I'm going to work my way through. And I'm going to start on this left hand side. I mean, there are in the real scene there are so many of these branches. It's I'm not going to look to create it in a photorealistic way, but I am going to look to just create the indication that, you know, there's this kind of rich, lacy kind of tapestry of branches, and try to stay true to the nature of the trees. You know, they kind of go everywhere and bend every which way. We'll see how it goes. I'm gonna start working a little quicker, hopefully here. And one obstacle I'm running into is, believe it or not, some of that paint in the background is thicker than I intended. You know, if you don't get the coverage, you could always come in and draw over it. If some of that blue mixes in the background, that's totally okay. Crisscross. some smaller branches that'll come in like this. This is going to be this strange kind of lacy network of tree branches. We'll just keep working on building that. It'll help to twist the brush as you work your way through some of the paint that's already there. And if you get, you know, paint mixing in from the background, that's okay. All right, so I think when it comes to this group of branches that are kind of like the medium-sized branches, I think we're in a good spot here. I'm going to work some in over here. I'm going to start thinking a little bit more consciously about the rhythm I'm trying to create here and the patterns I'm trying to create as I go. Work in even opportunistically some of this color into the main trunk here. There's an opportunity to create more texture and more weight to some of these older, thicker portions of the tree. Take it. Also opportunities to create color harmony too, just by smearing in some of the paint maybe you picked up from other areas. So I'm going to get some of those medium-sized limbs off to the right of the painting. Start building up that network of tree branches there. More purple, more blue. Oops, that's okay. I can always thin these branches out. Never panic or worry that you kind of screwed up the taper of a tree or a branch, because you could always make it thinner by painting the negative space where the sky is, by repainting that. And I'll show you what I mean. Alright, so we got an interesting branch I want to put in here, which kind of goes and curls up like that. And then that branch has a branch. And then we got a little low branch off there, which will play with the taper a little bit and how that connects in. There we go. All right. Keep going. More purple. It's getting a little too blue. Another low branch, another branch here. Whoops. Started out a little too thick there. That's okay. And maybe another one. Right now I'm not really worried about, you know, the accuracy of, you know, how a tree would even grow at this point. I'm trying to be mindful of that in the back of my mind, but I'm thinking more about, you know, where I'm trying to draw the viewer's attention. I'm going to create some branches that don't necessarily go all the way up, that are medium size. Maybe they broke off. You know, in recent years, we have gotten some pretty intense windstorms that have destroyed a lot of trees here in northeastern PA. So we do have a lot of broken branches and fallen trees and stumps. All right. I'm gonna work some of this into the tree trunk, like I mentioned before. Hopefully make the tree look nice and old and gnarly the way they kind of are in real life. Yeah, I'm gonna work some of this color in. Some grassy areas here. And in the background, why not? It's there. think we'll probably go and cover those open spaces in the water reflection, and then also in the moon. I'm going to get a new brush here that I haven't used yet in this painting. I'd go with a round brush, bigger round brush if I can find one. Excuse me. There we go. Just gonna wipe that down. There's a lot of yellow ochre in this particular brush right now. Okay, so I'm going to dip into almost my pure yellow here. I might put a little red here and there, but for now, almost a pure yellow, maybe a little white from time to time. I'm just going to outline the inner part of this moon. And if it blends in a little bit, that's totally okay. With the sky color surrounding it. Okay. And then take that. I'm going to work in some of these reflections kind of toward the outer edge of how I set it up here. Don't want the paint to mix too much because yellow and blue make green. We don't want green there. A little bit is okay because it'll maybe enhance the kind of eeriness of the whole scene. Some of this into some trees in the background and even up front here, but we're going to wait to do that. Okay. I think I read in a couple of books that on painting, and have seen it in a couple of instructional videos, that generally with oil paints you want your darker colors to be thinner, your lighter colors and your highlights to be thicker. Well, I'm staying true to that right here. This is pure yellow out of the tube in some of these spots here. Pure cad yellow. I am letting it mix in a little bit with the underpainting, which is kind of a green. I will work in a little bit of cad red in just a minute. I want to enhance. There we go. On the outer edge of the moon a little bit. There's like a fuzzy haze. some of that away and work in a little bit of work the edges a little bit with some paper towel. More little puddle of almost pure white distinted yellow. Work some of that in there. And I'll get some of that also in this crazy looking reflection. It's a little crazy looking, but that's how kind of how it was. What I might do is take this mixture of titanium white tinted a little yellow and work the outer edges of the reflection and then blend it. I'll give that a try. It's the worst thing that can happen. Nothing. Screw up the painting. Big deal. Do it over. Yeah, so probably that's what I'm gonna do. Take a clean brush and just ever so gently soften the edges of that reflection, barely touching. I definitely don't want to lift up the paint if I can avoid it. With how that's working out. All right. So at this point, take some longer breaks in between, and ask questions like, what can I do to elevate this painting, and maybe turn away from it for a little bit, because I have been working on it for at least 45 minutes here, I would guess. Walk to the other side of the room, turn and look. I think the next step is going to build in more textures and build in some thinner tree branches in to that network of tree branches. Just keep building those trees up. And then probably have to play around a little bit with the grass in the foreground. And I'll be close to done. You know, maybe a couple of shadows in the water. This is close to you know, what I was aiming for. I don't want to mess with that. With that brush. Use paper towel. Just to make a quick adjustment to the moon. So I'll lift up some of that paint right there. We got one more little thing I want to do there. That's better. One more. All right, there you go. Work with, if I can find, excuse my reach here. There we go. No, that won't work. Neither will that. It's funny, these liner brushes tend to be shorter handled. I don't know, maybe there's something I'm missing, but all right. So I'm going to get a little bit more black over here because I want to mix that into that purpley color. And a fair amount of oil on the brush here. And mix that in. And I'm going to start reestablishing some of those mid-sized branches, but also adding some smaller branches. Let's see, that's a little too dark, a little too black. There you go, that's fine. Create some deeper shadows and such on these main trunks. Purpley bluish gray here. modulate the lightness and the darkness of this, you know, based upon where I think there's going to be deeper, darker shadows. So for example, where these two trunks butt together on the opposite side of where the moon is, there's definitely going to be a darker shadow there. So I'll work that in. Same goes here. You know, where there's a recessed spot in the tree on the opposite side of where the moon is, there's going to be darker. There we go. Oops. That's totally okay. Just pull that off like that, like that. We use some of that there. And we'll just keep building this up. Yeah, because part of, you know, really what this painting is all about is, in my mind, the weird light effects that we're seeing while peering through this network of kind of lacy tree branches. That's really what this painting is all about. It's important to kind of have some sort of hypothesis or point of view. Yeah. I might even obscure the view of the moon with a tree branch. We'll see if I get brave enough to do that. And then let's see, a little darker shadow on that side. And we'll scuff it up a little bit. Got a little tree branch that kind of down like that. And a broken one, that's fine. So we're 1 hour 26 minutes in, 8:36. You know, lately I've been lucky. I've been choosing subjects and paintings and been making progress, making quick work of a lot of the paintings. Been able to finish in one sitting, kind of working intuitively, not with a real well-formulated game plan. This one's going to take a little longer. I still am hopeful I can get it done in one sitting though. Got a little blue. Strengthen this a little bit. Maybe broken tree branch there, strengthen that. Make that look a little rougher. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like this just jutting out and doing nothing, so yeah, I think what I might do is create like a little twist like that, a little twist like that. And then maybe another gnarly kind of broken branch. That. Yeah, we're getting close. There's only so much you could do. I'm gonna work in, maybe some indication of some darker patches where the shadows might fall in the grass. Purple, maybe a little bit of the blue. I'll break that up a little bit. I'm not going to leave it like that. A little bit of green. Yeah, the shadow on this tree with where it's positioned is going to come toward us. For the most part. Opportunity to create illusion of depth with the perspective. And bring some of that up into the tree. Yeah, that's coming along okay. Blue. Close to done. I'm gonna take a quick pause and let's think about this a little bit. See if there's opportunities to capture the flow of the eye a little bit. Create some interesting color dynamics maybe. I think there might be, particularly in the water and the grass, but also in the tree branches. There's still, I think, opportunities. So there's little branches. I don't want to make this symmetrical in any way, but there's, little branches that will come out and across. I'm going to widen that base there a little bit. make it so these trees look like they're reaching for the moon. Yeah, that's a good paint title. Who knows? And I'll probably want to build in some indications of some highlights. Yeah, all right. I'll just keep working these in. Yeah, I think I'll probably stop soon. Work in some more shadows. think we're at a good place to stop for now. I may come back in and, you know, build up and intensify some patterns in the sky and in the water and in the grass, but for now we are going to call it. I appreciate you joining. If you check this out, check out some of my other videos. Got quite a few, most of which more recently have been live, like this session. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you found it interesting and valuable. Hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Hope to see you next time.